At WHBR WVUP, we love shining a spotlight on local churches and ministries, like the one you're about to watch. If you enjoy their program, please let them know. Reach out on Facebook and send them a quick message. Follow their page. Hit like, comment, and share their videos with your friends. Your support makes a real difference to the churches we broadcast and to our station. Thank you for sharing, and enjoy the program.
You see men and women stand in front of a camera and they bold-faced lie to you, and everybody in the nation can know that it's a lie because there's so much evidence saying, you know, we have the saying is that, how do you know they're lying? Because their lips are moving. We make that comment, hey, how do you know they're lying? Because their lips are moving, all right? But the problem is that they lie so often, whether they believe that lie, is that they're convinced, you know what, you're not smart enough to figure that out. Let's pick it up. Verse 1, chapter 1. Now in the days, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Huh? Yeah, amen. That's good. Ahasuerus, who's also called Xerxes. I can say Xerxes, we'll use that. Who reigned from India. Oh, India's in the Bible. Who knew that? Who knew that India was in the Bible? Anybody know that? No one ever talks about that. India, by name, is in the Bible. This book is written about 300 to 400 years before Christ, and India is named in the book. He says he ruled from India to Ethiopia. Well, what an expanse that is. All the way from India across the southern parts of the Middle East and all the way into northern Africa. And over 127 provinces. And in those days, the palace where King, I'm going to call him Xerxes, sat on the royal throne of his kingdom was in Susa. Now, Susa is just south of Tehran, all right? And in the city of Susa, if we ever get a chance, or you or I ever get a chance to go visit there, there is a building that's a little smaller than this sanctuary, and it houses the burial places for both Mordecai and Esther. You go into that building and you walk into the inner sanctum of that building, and in an area that's about the size of half the sanctuary, there's a room and there's a crypt on one side and the other. One side is Esther and the other side is Mordecai. They're buried there side by side. They've been kept and preserved for almost 2,500 years. Isn't that interesting? But it's not well marked, and unless you know that, you're going to have a hard time finding it. But it says, on the third year of his reign, he prepared a feast for his officials and servants, so the army commanders of Persia and Media and the nobles and the officials of the province were before him. He unveiled the riches of his glorious kingdom and the costly luxury of his greatness of many days, 180, that's half a year. And those days were completed. The king prepared a 7-day feast for all the people that were present, from the greatest to the least in the citadel of Susa. And this feast was in the courtyard garden of the king's palace, where white and blue linen hanging were fastened with the cords of white and purple linen with silver rings and columns of marble. And the gold and silver plated couches were on a mosaic pavement, porphyry, is that what marble? Mother of pearl and other costly stones. And they provided drinks in golden vessels, vessels being diverse from one another, and gold and royal wine in abundance by the expense of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not mandatory, because the king had directed all the stewards of his house to serve according to each man's pleasure. In other words, you had the right to do it, or to drink it or not to drink it. Additionally, Vashti, the queen prepared a feast for the women in the royal house of the king. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, in other words, he was a little buzzed. Can we say that? The king was buzzed. He was merry. And he commanded Mehuman and Beztha and Harbona and Bigtha and Abitha and Zathar and Carcass and the 7 eunuchs attending the needs of the king to bring Queen Vashti before the king with the royal crown to unveil her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful. Mark it. She was a 10 of 10. She was the Bo Derek of the day, all right? Some of you younger people might not know who Bo Derek was. That's okay. So it says, but Queen Vashti refused to come to the king's command delivered by his eunuchs, and therefore the king grew very angry, and his wrath burned within him. Now, she opened herself up because he can order her to be killed for her disobedience to his command. When the king spoke to the wise men, they understood the times, for by this way the king would speak before all who understood the law and judgment. Those nearest him, which was Karshena and Sethar and Admatha and Tarshish and Maris and Marcina and Mecunum and Memucan, I should say. And they were the 7 princes of Persia and Media in the king's closest confidence, his inner circle. And when they met with the king, they held the highest rank in the kingdom, according to the law that there should be done about what there should be done about Queen Vashti, because she did not obey the command of the king when it was delivered by the eunuchs. And Memucan said in answer before the king and the princes, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also the princes and all the people who were in the provinces of the king. For this shed matter, and the queen spread to all the wives that they could look with contempt on their husbands when it's reported that the king commanded her to be brought before him, and she never came. Wow, what an example. She's giving an example. You know what? Although you gave me an honorable order, I choose to live in rebellion to that. And in this very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media who hear the queen's acts will say the same thing to all the king's princes, and there will be more contempt and wrath. And if it pleases the king, let a royal decree be sent by him, and let it be written from the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that they may not be altered, that Vashti will never again enter the presence of the king, and the king will give her her royal position to another woman who is better than she. When the king's decree is that he made proclaim through all of his empire, for it is vast, that all the wives should give honor to their husbands, both prominent and lowly. He didn't care what station you were in life. You know what? It's important. A man should honor his wife, and a wife should honor his husband, right? And all the wives shall give honor to their husbands, both prominent and loyal. And the suggestion pleased the king and the princes, so the king did according to the word of Memucan. And he sent letters to all the king's provinces in the script of every province, in the language of every people group, bearing the message of the languages of a people, which each man should rule over his house. After these things, in the rage of the king abated, he became mindful of Vashti, which was done, and he decreed against her. So the king's servants who attended him said, let the beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. And let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, so that they may gather all of the beautiful women virgins in the citadel of Susa, and in the harem under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of that harem, and let ointments and cosmetics be given to them. Yes, ladies can have cosmetics. It's not a sin. I know. People like that. Well, that's just the devil's war paint. It is not. You can smell pretty and you can look pretty. Can I say that? Are you okay? We're sending perfume over to India. The ladies love it. And they love the nail polish. They want to look beautiful and they want to smell beautiful. Amen? And the idea pleased the king, so he acted accordingly. Now, the citadel of Susa, there was a certain Jew named Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite. For he had been taken away from Jerusalem among the exiles and carried into captivity with King Jehoiakim of Judah, Jeconiah, I should say, of Judah, and the king of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and he was the guardian of Adashah, which is Esther, that was her name, which his uncle's daughter, because she had neither father nor mother, they had all passed away. And the young woman was beautiful to look at and beautiful in form. In other words, she was a looker and she had a shape. Can we say that? Yeah. She had curves, right? There's nothing wrong with curves. True? Don't get stodgy on me here. All right. And when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. God bless him. He was a great man. When the king noticed that his decrees were heard, that many young women were then gathered to the citadel of Susa and placed under the custody of Haggai, Esther was likewise brought to the king's house and placed under the custody of Haggai, and he was in charge of the harem because the young lady appeared pleasing to him. He caught the attention of this man, and she gained favor in his sight. He quickly gave her the ointments and the cosmetics and the allotted food, and the 7 young chosen women from the king's palace. He also transferred her to the young women who were the best of the harem. She was the creme de la creme. She was in that little group of ladies. This is the creme de la creme. Esther had not disclosed her people. She didn't disclose her lineage because Mordecai had charged her not to disclose it. There's discretion. They don't need to know. Every day Mordecai walked about the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther fared, that it might be done with her. And the turn came for each young woman to go into the king. And after being 12 months under the regulation of the woman, since this was the regular period of their beautifying, and 6 months with the oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and ointments for the woman. And when the young women went into the king in this way, she was given whatever she desired to take with her from her harem into the king's palace. And in the evening she went in the morning she returned the second harem and returned to the custody of Shazag and the king's eunuch. And who was in charge of the concubines? And she did not go into the king again until the king delighted in her and called for her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who was taken to her as his own daughter, to go into the king, she asked for nothing except that the king's eunuch Haggai, who had charge of the woman, advised her. She took counsel. She was a wise woman. She listened to the people that were in her life. Smart woman, very wise. Now Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. And so Esther was taken to the king in his royal house in the month of Tebeth, which is the 10th month of the 7th year of his reign. In other words, that was early spring, which is where we're at right here. And it says, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other women because she had gained grace and favor in his sight more than all the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head, and he made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king held a great feast for all of his officials and servants. And it was the feast of Esther. The feast for Esther. How about that? She gets her own feast. And he remitted his provinces from tax paying and gave gifts to his royal with royal generosity. And at the second gathering of the virgins, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not yet disclosed her lineage of her people, since Mordecai commanded her not to. And she followed the command of Mordecai, just as she was when she was underneath his protection or care. And during those days when Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, so he's a leader. The only people who sit at the king's gate are people in leadership. And Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, who served as keepers of the door, became angry and sought to attack the king. All right? Now, these are political opponents. So, I mean, what's going on today in this nation with political people setting up and trying to entrap people and use lawfare and all of it, this is going on way back then. And it says, as they were doing that, it says, but the matter became known to Mordecai. He reported to Queen Esther. Queen Esther reported to the king in the name of Mordecai. This information is coming from my uncle. This is the one. When the matter was investigated and then it was confirmed, both men were hanged on the gallows, and it was written in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. All right? Justice was served. Now, after this day, there's a man named Haman. How many know that in every generation in the kingdom, there's a Haman? Every generation, there is a Haman. All right? And he's about to show himself. Now, you would think that some people could learn their lesson, but you know what? They are so blinded by pride or their desire for power, you cannot unconvince them. Now, we're seeing this play out in Washington right now. We've been watching it play out for years, is that you see men and women stand in front of a camera and they bold-faced lie to you, and everybody in the nation can know that it's a lie because there's so much evidence saying, you know, we have the saying is that, how do you know they're lying? Because their lips are moving. We make that comment. Hey, how do you know they're lying? Because their lips are moving, all right? But the problem is that they lie so often, whether they believe that lie, is that they're convinced, you know what, you're not smart enough to figure that out. Well, I think we, the American people, have really wised up to a lot of things. We know, all right? We know. And so we're seeing a lot of this being turned around. Well, the same thing is happening here. The same thing is true in the Middle East right now, because you got the Sunnis and the Shiites. This is what's going on right now. And so you've got this clash going on with the same people type, but you know what? A Persian is not an Arab, and an Arab is not a Persian. And most people don't understand that. There's a difference between the two. Correct? Susan, correct? There is definitely two. And Arabs don't care for Persians, and Persians don't care for Arabs. All right? They're not one and the same. But most people look and just think, oh, they're the same. They're not the same. And I learned this even when I had in between full-time ministry assignments. I decided to start a business where I was doing home renovation, and I hired one of my crews. My best roofing crew ever was a group of Hondurans, and man, they were good. And they could tear off 40 square of roof on a day and put it all back together. And we'd be off that job at 7, 8 o'clock at night, moving on the next. And I couldn't find any white boys that would do this. Hello, not to say, I'm just saying that nobody would work that hard in one day, but they would do it. They go in there with 7 to 9 guys, and man, they had a system down. They didn't waste any time, and they still took a 2-hour siesta in the afternoon. Yeah, and so I learned that, and so I said one day, hey, why don't we hire another crew? Maybe we could find a good crew, a faithful crew of Mexicans. And I remember he turned to me and he said, they didn't call him Pastor Gary, they called him Mr. Gary. Go, Mr. Gary, never hire a Mexican. And I went, what? Never hire a Mexican. I said, why would you not hire? I said, they're great. They're lazy. And I'm thinking, they're lazy? They're not lazy. They're lazy. I'm thinking, well, I haven't met one yet that's lazy. They work really hard. But in their mindset, and see, they have a different culture. And so they don't see them as well educated. They don't see them as on an equal status. Now, we would look at that and go, well, you're part of the Hispanic culture. Well, there's a variance in Hispanic cultures. Hello. All right. So, and the same thing's true in America, too. Because you get people in certain locales, and like if you're outside that locale, guess what? Well, you're just a dumb person, right? Or they don't care for you. And I'll never forget the first time that when we moved from Illinois and we were in Louisiana, and I was preaching at church, and a guy came up to me and he said, I want to welcome you to church. And I said, well, great, thanks for that. And your name is? And he introduced himself. He said, hey, this is the first thing he said to me. You know the difference between a Yankee and a damn Yankee? No, I don't, sir. What would be the difference? He goes, well, a Yankee is somebody who lives up north. I said, yes, sir. and a damn Yankee is somebody that came down south. God bless America. Because I think we're all under the same flag, right? So you learn culture really quickly, don't you? And not everybody's warm and welcome. There are churches, they don't like anybody, but they're one ethnic group. And they'll run you out. I think that is really small-minded, because I want to see everybody in the world in. That's why we're doing what we're doing. All of it. But Haman has a great hatred for one particular group of people. And it still exists today. And it's all spiritually driven. And so what ends up happening is he's got some of his friends that say, you know what? We could eliminate these people. We'll just make a rule that they don't have the right to exist. And so we can have the legal right to take them out. And so we'll get the king to write the law. You know the story. We get the king to write the law. And so they present something that you think it's good, but you find out when you read the fine print of it, it's not good at all. It's good for a small group of people. Well, let me ask you a question. How many times have laws passed in Washington, it's presented as, oh, this is a great, great, great thing for all of America, and you find out it's not great at all for all of America, but it's great for a very small amount of them, and it will greatly enrich them and empower them while it divests everybody else of their money and their control over a particular item. True? Yeah. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. And so what ends up happening is that who finds out about this plot? Mordecai does. He finds out about it, and he's going, something's got to happen. And so when all of this is going on, let's go to chapter 4, verse 1. And it says, when Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out in the midst of the city and cried with a loud voice and a bitter cry. He went as far as the king's gates, because no one was allowed to enter into the king's gate with clothed in sackcloth. And each and every province where the king's command had decreed, because he'd already signed the decree and set it out all over, from India all the way to Ethiopia, and had come. And it says, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. And the young woman of Esther and her eunuchs came and told her of it. The queen was then seized by anguish. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he could remove his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. So Esther summoned Hagtech, one of the king's eunuchs, and appointed to attend to her, and commanded him concerning Mordecai to learn what was about to happen and why. So he went out from there to Mordecai that was in the area of the city in front of the city's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, the sum of silver that Haman had promised to pay the king's treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai then gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa concerning their destruction, and to show Esther and tell her about it, and then charge her to go to the king in order to gain favor with the king and make requests in the presence of the king for her people. And Hagtech returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And again, Esther spoke to Hagtech and ordered him to reply to Mordecai and say, all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces know that whatever or whoever, whether man or woman, that wishes to come to the king in the inner court but has not been summoned, in other words, you just don't walk in, has not been summoned, that there's a law to put him or to her to death, unless for some reason the king should hold out a gold scepter that they might live. I, however, have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days. So the words of Esther came to Mordecai, and Mordecai replied to them. Here it is. This is the famous phrase that we all use now. Do not think that in the king's palace you would be more likely to escape than all the other Jews, but if you remain silent at such a time as this, protection and deliverance for the Jews will be ordained from some other place. But you and your father's house shall be destroyed, for who knows that you have attained a royal position for such a time as this. We use this all the time. For such a time as this. For such a time as this. We're here for such a time as this. And Esther replied, sending back to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews who are found in Susa and fast for me. Stop eating and drinking for 3 days, a 3-day fast. Nothing. Let's humble ourselves before the Lord. Day and night, and I and my young women will fast likewise. Only then will I dare go into the king, since it's not allowed by law. And if I perish, I perish. I'm going to put myself out there. If I die in this act, I die in this act. Because guess what? I'm either going to die here or I'm going to die here. All right? So the question is, how do you want to die? Do you want to die this way, or do you want to die offering yourself this way? And so she's imploring the mercy of God to do what he's going to do. So Mordecai went away and did exactly as Esther had commanded him. On the third day, Esther put on her royal apparel, positioned herself in the king's palace courtyard so that she would be in direct line with the part of the king's throne room where the king sat facing the entrance of the room in his royal throne, on his royal throne in the royal hall. And when the king saw Queen Esther standing quietly in the courtyard, she gained favor in his sight. So the king held out the golden scepter in his hand, that's his royal scepter, in his hand to Esther, and Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. I mean, she accepted the favor he was granting to her. And the king said to her, Queen Esther, what do you want? What is your request? Even if it's up to half the kingdom, I would give it to you. Wow, what favor. What favor. Esther answered, said, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for him. Oh, you know what? She's setting up her political ploy. Now, this happened this week. I get really kind of excited about some of the stuff that's going on. I love it when evil ploys, the dark state, the deep state, gets exposed. Did anybody get upset with no acknowledgement or no authorization from the Congress? The president, a sitting president, gives them billions of dollars in cash and gold and silver and German marks, puts it on military planes in the middle of the night on pallets and flies it direct into Tehran and drops it off with nobody's knowledge. We find out on the back end. Did anybody think that there was something a little bit crazy about that?
Thank you for joining us on Encounter Breakout. If you would like to hear the message in full, visit our website at encounterchurchpensacola.org and join our broadcast Sundays at 9/8 p.m. Central and Wednesdays at 11:30/10:30 a.m. Central, right here on WHBR, WVUP. If you call Encounter Church home and would like to support us, there are many ways you can give. You can text the word GIVE to 616-300-1102. And for Cash App and Venmo details, visit our website. Experience life, love, and community. See you next time on Encounter Breakout.
Thank you for watching the local ministries that we broadcast here on WHBR WVUP. If you are blessed by their programs, reach out and let them know. If you'd like to see your church on this channel, please let us know, and we'd be more than happy to reach out to your pastor. You can contact us at 850-473-8633 or email us at whbr@ctnonline.com.